Jonathan Pollard was born in 1954 in Texas to a Jewish family. His family moved, and his father was a microbiologist teaching at Notre Dame University in South Bend, Indiana. Jonathan was raised with a deep love for Israel instilled within him. He often vowed to migrate to Israel to live and to aid in fighting against the country's enemies. Jonathan was educated at Stanford University, graduating with a degree in political science in 1976, and he enrolled in the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. While there, he is remembered by several of his acquaintances as having boasted that he was a dual citizen of America and Israel. Don't know why that's a claim to fame, but let's keep going. He claimed to have worked for Mossad, to have attained the rank of colonel in the IDF. He also claimed and was proud to have killed an Arab while on guard duty at a kibbutz. While in school, Jonathan often reveled in telling schoolmates of his adventures related to his father's work for the CIA. He often created stories such as this and even went so far as to enter fabricated information in an application for employment within the US government. After failing to complete his pursuits in school, Pollard took a job with the US Navy intelligence, working as a research specialist in 1979. As an intelligence specialist, he was to work on Soviet issues. A background check was required to receive the necessary security clearances, but no polygraph test. In addition to a top secret clearance, a more stringent, sensitive, compartmented information clearance was required. Now, I've worked for the government in Washington, D.C. There's different levels of clearance. I think today, if you was to have this job again with this top secret information, you would need a polygraph. I think a TCI or a TSCI is what they call it. Now, the Navy asked for but was denied information from the CIA regarding Jonathan, including the results of their pre-employment polygraph test revealing Pollard's excessive drug use. Pollard observed what he considered considerable anti-Semitism between the dealings of the United States and Israel. You see, Pollard, in his naval office, believed that the United States often withheld information from its ally. In 1984, he was assigned to serve as an analyst for the Naval Investigation Service, given special clearances and access to sensitive materials, and often shared some of this information with confidants and acquaintances. He was then recruited by Rafi Eitan, the head of the Bureau of Scientific Relations, and was introduced to Israeli war hero Colonel Aviam Selah. I feel like in Jonathan's life, and I'm going to tell you more about what he did, he was caught between serving America or serving Israel. In fact, this Colonel Selah was serving as an Israeli operative under the cover of being a graduate student at New York University. Now, in a meeting in May 1984, Jonathan Pollard offered to supply Israel with sensitive information in order to help Israel in strengthening its defense systems. He turned over information related to Iraqi chemical weaponry. Another Israeli agent, Yosef Yagur, was assigned as Jonathan's handler. Jonathan turned over thousands of documents to Yagur, which he was able, because of his clearance, to simply check the documents out and take them home with him at night. In return, Jonathan received $2,500 each month, as well as other gifts, including a diamond and sapphire engagement ring for his fiancée, Anne Henderson. So I guess the choice was made. He chose Israel over America. How slimy is that? And for those watching, how many of you knew this story beforehand? Now, many of the secrets that Jonathan turned over were related to weaponry employed by Israel's enemies, including Iraq. Pollard gathered most of his information by searching Defense Intelligence Agency's databases and conducted searches up to 3 to 4 times a week. Often, he provided original documents to his Israeli contacts, allowing them to photocopy them over the weekend, after which they would return them in time for him to return to work on Monday morning. Now, what's interesting though is that, of course, during this period in the 80s, Iran and Iraq are at war. He's supplying information to Israel about Iraq's weaponry. But who supplied Iraq with chemical weapons at that time? Yes, it was America. But not because of some anti-Israeli stance, they just did it for profit and for influence. The range of materials that Pollard provided included satellite photographs, weaponry assessments, and secret internal documents. Over time, Israel requested more and more information and continued rewarding Pollard handsomely. He was treated to vacations in Europe, including his honeymoon, and was lavished with monetary gifts. At one point, he was presented with an Israeli passport and was told that a Swiss bank account had been opened on his behalf containing $30,000, along with the promise that 30 grand would be added the next 10 years. Eventually, Pollard's excessive research and requests for data alerted officials at the NIS, including his supervisor, Jerry Agee. An investigation found that several highly sensitive documents that he requested were not within his workspace and thus likely had been removed from the building. The FBI was alerted and they began observing him. It's actually scandalous behavior, don't you think? Here we are, thinking Israel and America are best friends. Then again, you don't pay your best friend $4 billion a year, do you? Now, on November the 18th, 1985, Jonathan was stopped and questioned by the FBI and NIS security officials. In his possession were several top secret documents. He was questioned repeatedly over the course of the next few days and, growing desperate, ran to the Israeli embassy for safety.
So the other option all at once he thinks of is the Israeli embassy.
On the morning of November 21st, 1985, the Pollards led the FBI on a wild ride through the streets of Washington.
He took his wife down and her cat, got in the car, and drove off with special agents following in hot pursuit around the city of Washington, D.C., and everybody wondering where the heck is he going?
I've never known of another spy case that ends like that. I mean, just put yourself in that position. What are you thinking, Jonathan? You know, you're going to go in there and they're going to take you in? What do you think the U.S. government's going to do about it? What do you think Ronald Reagan would have done? I mean, there would have been some serious conversations, and the question would have been, well, why are you protecting this man? I mean, he's an American citizen. Why do you have to give him any kind of immunity?
The fallout that Israel had engaged in espionage against the United States was immense. Public outcry and anger caused a backlash against Israel and jeopardized the country's political and intelligence relationships with the United States. Israel tried to deflect the blame for the activity, claiming it could be a rogue operation.
Unauthorized deviation from Israel's clear-cut policy of not conducting any spy operation whatsoever in the United States or against its interest, the United States being a true friend of Israel.
Pollard cooperated with US officials but argued that he was not spying against the United States but rather for Israel, to whom he had a greater allegiance. He also argued that much of his information was basically useless to Israel, but the prosecutors demonstrated that some of the material was funneled by Soviet moles within the Israeli intelligence system and had compromised hundreds of agents and friendlies in the Arab world. And that brings on to another question. First of all, why do you have friendlies in the Arab world? Get the hell out. Also, you got an American who's spying on Israel on behalf of the Soviets. Huh? Now, as for the trial, Jonathan Pollard pled guilty to espionage and was sentenced to life in prison. His wife was sentenced to 2 lesser crimes and received a 5-year sentence, during which she complained vigorously about her treatment. She was released after 3 years and promptly divorced Pollard. Pollard was considered a hero in Israel, and many attempts were made to secure his release. Several Israeli officials made overtures towards the Bush and Clinton administrations, but were denied. After serving more than 30 years in federal prison, Pollard was paroled on November the 20th, 2015. Under the terms of his parole, he cannot leave the United States without permission for 5 years and was subject to wearing an ankle bracelet monitor. His request to move to Israel had been denied. Now, back in 1995, Jonathan applied for Israeli citizenship, but the Ministry of Interior initially refused on the grounds that Israel did not grant citizenship to those who had not yet immigrated. but they reversed this decision and granted the petition. Some sources claim that Pollard then renounced his United States citizenship and was now just an Israeli citizen, which would mean that if he was deported, he would go straight to Israel. Either way, in December 2020, Jonathan Pollard officially immigrated to Israel and became a full Israeli citizen. Bruv, this is scandalous, pusillanimous. How weak and pathetic are America? It's not America's fault that a random person was spying on them. It happens all the time. Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, Daniel Ellsberg. Wait, they were whistleblowers, but you know what I mean. They took government secrets and let the world know, right? Now Jonathan Pollard is the shit on the bottom of our shoe compared to them heroes. But how does America still give Israel $4 billion a year knowing Israel was spying on them? Comment, tell me what you think.